I'm working on the Denon DR-M44. My customer asked me if I could replace the wooden panels, or the vinyl panels on this, with some nice wood panels. They were quite scratched up and dented and damaged, and the answer is yes, I can do that. So I sent him a couple of pictures, what I thought might look nice. One of them was a cherry side, and the other was a walnut side. And he liked both of those, but he wanted something a little bit more dark and dramatic, and he actually suggested Macassar Ebony. And I'm good with that. I love Macassar Ebony. I've done numerous projects with it. I particularly like it for pulls, cabinet pulls. These are some that I've done in the past. Design I've kind of settled on, and I quite like them. And so I had a piece here. It was a beautiful piece, but it wasn't suitable size-wise. And so I looked online. My local supplier is great, but they're also in the middle of a horrible road construction project right in front of their shop, and it's quite an ordeal to get there and back. So I looked online, and I ran into a really fine company, Rare Woods, and they had a piece that I thought looked nice, and it was described as having a crack, but the crack wasn't really visible in their photographs online. And so I emailed and spoke with the general manager, Luke, and he helped me through and sent me a couple more pictures of it, and I decided that the piece was exactly what I needed for this job. So it was very nice to run into a company that went out of their way to help me out and get what I needed for this project. So this is the piece that came in, and it came in quickly, very quickly, a few days. It's a lovely piece of Macassar. It's also 8/4, or maybe not 8/4, maybe it was more like 6/4, but anyway, it was thick enough that I was able to resaw it and book match it and get exactly the sort of pattern that I was after and that my client was also looking for. And I also sent him the pictures of this piece, and we agreed on it being a nice one for this job. So this video is mostly about making the sides for this Denon deck, even though there's not any cassette work in here. A spoiler alert, I suppose. This is a woodworking video, but it's woodworking for a cassette deck. So if you don't like this sort of thing, thanks for joining me so far, and I'll maybe see you on the next one. So just getting the label off of here. And that also kind of shows a little bit about what the wood will look like when it's got some finish on it. Now that brown and dark stain coming off on my rag, that's the oil in the wood, and it does present some problems for glue up, and I'm going to go through those in the back of the video, how I deal with it. But it's a lovely piece. There's the little crack. It doesn't interfere with what I'm needing at all. I'm just kind of laying it out here and looking at it and deciding what I think will work. These are the old, these are just vinyl. It's MDF, chipboard covered with vinyl. These are the sides of the deck. This is just a process of going through and seeing how I want to lay this back up. Horizontal grains, vertical grains are difficult because you can get them exactly vertical or exactly horizontal, but because the grain isn't precisely straight lines, visually it can look not straight or vertical or horizontal, however you want it. So there's some discernment that goes on laying it out, and that's basically what I'm doing here. I will lay it out first off and mark it out for linearity, but then I'll go back afterwards and see what it looks like visually. And that's the process, and there's really no other way to go about it. I can lay out a straight line and get it perpendicular in the way I want it, but in the end, I have to do it by eye and see how it looks. Just getting rough dimensions. It's a pretty straight piece, but you can see that I'll have to do a little bit of a angled cut to get the grain straight, and that's fine. That's what we do. And even this is only rough. When these things are cut and laid out and looked at, that's when the final determination of how the cut's made will be done entirely by eye, entirely by what looks correct, not by what measures correct. Fast forward through this a little bit. I'm taking these down to size because I know I have to make some adjustments on them. It's nice to be able to work the piece in full length, but in this case, just because of the way the grain is, I'll have to change that out a little bit. And here already, even just looking at it in shorter pieces, I'm making corrections on it, totally visually. This is not any measurements at all. I'm just doing this by eye. And of course, there's no way the camera can pick up what I'm seeing, but that's what I'm doing. I'm just going back and forth and determining where to make my first cut to get this grain the way I want it to look in the end, in the final product. This isn't the first time I've done this. I'm just making my correction cuts here. Joints that bandsaw cut I just made. And then we'll come back here to the table saw and rip those edges parallel. Let's do a quick blade change. Using a thin curve forest rip blade. I generally go on the rough widths on these about 1/4 inch wider than my finished, my desired finished width. And lengthwise, whatever, 1 inch, 2 inches. Now, all I'm doing here is marking this out because I'm resawing it just to be able to put them back together and keep track of them while they go through the rest of the milling process. Sawing them in half entirely by eye, no measuring done. And there's what the inside looks like. That will be my book match right there. And I find that very attractive. Just flip it back and forth, make sure I'm in the center. Very nice. Exactly what I had in mind. So we'll test the moisture content on these. Just need to check my chart and make sure I'm set up correctly. No, 8.2, 8.1%. That's usable just as it is right there. So 7 to 8% is perfectly usable. That could go into glue up right away. In my shop, however, It's much drier than that in my location, and I'm accustomed to working wood in a lower state of moisture content than that. And so I'm just going to sticker these for a couple of days, a few days, and let them acclimate to my shop environment. Go back and check them again before I get started on it. A lot of people would find this unusual, and it is, but it's quite dry here. And in most cases, I'm working lumber in the 6% range or less. And so now it's dried, and we'll go back and check it. And I have to apologize for the focus here again. It's doing what it wants to do. These are going to reach 6%. That's as low as this gauge will go, and it's what I'm accustomed to in my shop. The only really thing that's different about this is you have to be very deliberate during glue ups and not waste any time, not lollygag. Things have to be put together very quickly, and there's no option on that. And you know, those of us that work out here, we're used to it, and so I wouldn't know what it was like to have plenty of time, to have a lot of open time on a glue up. I'm always in a hurry on these. Once again, I'm just visually laying things out the way I want them to look in the end. And now what I'll do is rip them to rough width, somewhere around a quarter inch wider than they're finished. This is kind of an unfortunate camera angle because it looks like I'm being a little bit unsafe, but I'm really not. I've been doing this for close to 40 years, and if you count my fingers, you'll see they're all there. Thank God. And I'm happy with the way those look. I think they're very nice, and I think my customer will be very happy with them. We'll do a face plane, face joint, excuse me. This is my Swiss-made Inca jointer planer combination machine that has honestly very likely milled 1 million board feet of lumber for me over these years. It has been a absolute workhorse and a precision Swiss watch type instrument. You see me lubricating everything, keeping everything blown out, and that's one of the reasons I think it's still as good as it is, because I do this operation almost every time I use this machine, and always have. And so it's been good to me, and I've treated it well also. Don't have any particular thickness that I'm going for. Just the maximum that I can get. Then clean them up. Okay, their surface thickness to size, and now we'll just go back and straighten one edge. This is a 40-year-old Delta Unisaw. Anybody looking will probably notice this is not the stock arbor or flanges. These are, this is an arbor that I built for this machine, cast iron, and had it dynamic balanced, and the machine is just dead smooth. Yes, I'm just going to make these parallel now, and I'm slowing down here so you can see that just instinctively I'm reaching down and I'm adjusting the blade height while I'm ripping. This is a Forest Ultraplanar blade, and it will give a glass smooth finish that is easily able to be glued with no more work done than just that. And I do this without even thinking about it. I'm just kind of dialing it in while I'm working. Don't do this at home, kids. Okay, and there's going to be my final product, the way I want it laid up. This piece is interesting because there's the book match side, but the other side is also very nice, and matches the other piece nicely, even though it's not the book match. That doesn't happen very often. So I'll have to decide which is going to be the finished side on that one. Now, it's nearly impossible on a short piece like this to get a straight enough edge to glue directly, and you see there that it was rocking a little bit in the middle. There's a little bit of a crown. That's unavoidable in a short piece like this. If it was double this length, that wouldn't be like that. So what I'm doing here, I'm also using a jack plane that's a little longer than the piece itself. So what I'm doing is I'm intentionally producing a slight hollow. Instrument makers will know what I'm talking about. They do this all the time. And I am just going through it here and taking a tiny amount of wood off the inside, doing complementary cuts, and checking it because I want it to be slightly hollow in the center, not high in the center. So that's why I'm using that plane at an angle instead of going straight at it. The plane is longer than the work, and so there's no way it will produce that if I go at it straight. See, it's just a tiny, it's thinner than a hair. There, now I'm taking straight cuts, and I'll put it there, and it will still rock in the center. There's just no way to do this without intentionally producing that slight bit of hollow in the center. And I'm just looking at I'm looking at a backlight to see what kind of a hollow I have. I'm finding the sharp and clean edge, not even the sharp, the clean edge of that scraper, and just finalizing that up, and that's how I want it to be right there. Now both woodworking and audio suffer no shortage of fairy tales and superstitions. One of the big ones in woodworking is that you're supposed to wipe oily woods like ebony and rosewood and other things with acetone prior to gluing. This probably came from the superstition in aviation of wiping untreated aluminum with acetone before bonding. This does not work. Wiping an oily wood with a solvent for oil just wicks the oil to the surface and leaves a film of oil and acetone, maybe only a few molecules thick, but it is a deterrent to proper adhesion. So what I'm doing here is I'm mixing up a solution of calcium carbonate and any solvent. Acetone's fine, but it's fast and it doesn't allow enough time, really, I don't think, for the solution to work. But there are a lot of different solvents that can work in this situation. I'm trying to get somewhere around maybe a thick honey kind of a consistency. And what this will do is it will do that bit where it dissolves the oil and wicks it up to the surface, but then it'll hold it on the surface and then allow it to dry and wipe off. And I tried to do a time-lapse video because it's kind of fun to watch the oil wick to the surface here, but sadly it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Maybe I'll try to do this again sometime with a little bit better forethought. So what it does is as it dries, it wicks that oil up onto the surface and it's absorbed by the calcium carbonate and then dries. And it gives a good surface adherent for whatever bonding agents used. Here's a little bit better view of how all the different colors of the oil that it soaks up. Now, of course, we have to get all of that off of there because that's also a deterrent to adhesion. Although nothing as bad as the oil is. And I should say, most people would know this, but it's also very important to make the bond within a short period of time following all this procedure. Maybe an hour is what I shoot for. Put them back together, and then I have to do one final thing, which is just to very, very lightly scrape those adhering surfaces again, and this is when I'll finalize the fit also. Again, I just want to find the cleanest edge of that doesn't have any chips in it. This is a newly burnished scraper, but I still want the clean edge. And that's how much I'm taking off. It's a minute amount. This is all done by feel. That's it. That's all it needs, probably. We'll see. Yep, it's rocking on the edges, or on the ends, I should say, and that's where I want it. I don't want it rocking in the middle. That's what I want. I want to try and demonstrate here how much of a hollow I'm looking at. And so I've got these sitting on a light table, and I'm trying to position them for the camera so that the hollow on those two pieces can be seen clearly. I want to try and demonstrate the amount of concavity that actually exists there, and it's a very slight amount. I'm just positioning a clamp in the center. Just a little tiny bit of pressure is all it takes to squeeze that up. When I looked at the video, I wasn't sure that actually was shown the way I wanted it to, so I'm just doing this one more time. I could actually squeeze this together easily with my hand, but I wouldn't be able to show it. And so this little wooden clamp here can do it in a kind of a controlled way where it can be seen. That's exactly what I'm looking for on a glue joint like this. A small amount, almost imperceptible. On the light table, it looks like quite a bit. It's exaggerated, but let's see how much that really is in terms of actual numbers. Let's quantify it. Okay, so I've got my Brown and Sharp feeler gauge here, and I've selected the 1.5 thousandths leaf. I think that's the smallest one on there. This is going to be what? Somewhere around 0.04 millimeters, I believe. That's right. Should be pretty close to that. All right, so I've got it in there, or I had it in there. I think I can get it in there. All right, let's do it this way. Okay, now it's in there. And with the slightest bit of squeeze, I've got on there, I've got some drag on that leaf. Let's do it again. Okay, here it is. Sliding back and forth with the tiniest amount of squeeze on that piece of wood. I've got drag on the leaf. So that hollow is around 1/1000th of an inch, 1/1000th and a half of an inch. Let's glue it up. I'm using a 3M structural adhesive here because this is what I have available to me in the shop. It's number 420. It's extremely good product. This isn't necessary to use something like this. At this point, most wood glues would do a sufficient job, but I still prefer an epoxy on oily woods with this procedure. Not 5-minute epoxies. Those are not suitable for anything that has any sort of moisture content at all. 5-minute epoxy will break down in the presence of moisture vapor, which everything has. So any good epoxy will work. I just happen to be using this one. Also, resorcinols, a number of different things can work on this. The old urea formaldehyde worked great. Not Gorilla Glue, not polyurethane glues. I would avoid Gorilla Glue for any woodworking application. I hate to say it, but I've actually made more money repairing things that other people have repaired with Gorilla Glue. It's just not, it's just not good stuff. So I'm not using the mixer tip on this. I only need a small amount. And mixer tips, the first little bit waste quite a bit, so I'm just doing it this way. Actually got quite a bit more in there than I needed, but it is easier to mix up a larger amount correctly. This is 2 to 1, I think. I get everything scraped off the sides and get a start at the mixing. And then I've got a wooden dowel chucked in a drill with some serrations in it, and that's what I use to mix this up. Just trying to position it for the camera here. It's amazing how much more involved something is when you're trying to film it. Really interesting. Make sure I scrape the sides really well. And then I kind of go after this like it's a concrete mixer. Scrape the sides again. There's a point doing this that you really want to stop. You can overmix this material, and I just kind of know when that point is. I've done a lot of this. Just get the camera repositioned here. I'll clamp these with one single instrument maker's clamp right in the middle. That's all I need. If you ever find yourself needing a bar clamp to squeeze two pieces of wood together, you've done something wrong. Not that I don't use them, I use bar clamps, but I don't need them to do something like this. When I said any good epoxy will work, I meant any good epoxy that is meant for wood fibers that can wet those fibers out, not like JB Weld for steel. That doesn't work. It needs to be an epoxy that can and is able to wet out cellulose fibers. Just put a glove on and use that for aligning the faces. I don't need cawls or anything like that to do this job. I'll just align them with my fingers. Playing a little teeter-totter game with me there, so I'll put 2 gloves on. Do the next one. I don't usually work on a gray piece of carpet like this. I'm just doing this for the video. It makes a much nicer background than the worn out workbench top. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And that was very fortunate. That could have been a mess. Show you what the face of this looks like. Got even squeeze out all the way through. Small amount of clamping force, and that will make a good joint. Now I did do a test of this epoxy and procedure on this, on the cutoff pieces, the two little wedges that were sliced off initially, just to make sure that everything was the way I wanted it to be. And I did the calcium carbonate, and these were not prepared joints. They were just rough off the jointer. And there's the result after about a day or so of cure time. That's pretty much nearly 100% wood failure, meaning there was no adhesive failure. Maybe 95%. And so I'm happy that it's compatible adhesive, that procedure's good, and that this will last a long time. So this is the panel I'm replacing, and an artist's poor conception of what it might look like in the end. But not really. So if you made it this far with me, I do appreciate every one of you, and thank you for watching.